Party's not a party's a man who fights crime, and we're gonna watch him fight for a minute at a time with John and Dael, and I guess you just rhyme with Bat Minute!
Hello, and welcome once again to Bat Minute Forever, the podcast where we're not too timid to talk about Joel Schumacher's 1995 film Batman Forever, 1 minute at a time. I am one of the hosts, Niall McGowan.
And I am your other host, planting themselves directly into your mind, John Parker.
New podcasting technology. We're on the cutting edge of here.
Yeah, you'd have to download the show. I just interrupt your sleep.
It's just like, at 6:30 a.m. every morning. It's just like, you want to hear some crap about Batman Forever?
Here you go.
It's like, hey, isn't Edward Nygma's hat stupid in this scene? Hey.
It's a bit like in Futurama when they have like sponsored dreams.
Oh.
You get like advertisements as dreams, don't you?
No, I would 100% be taking advantage of that if any advertiser would ever give us any kind of money. I am nothing if not a shill. But someone who has much more integrity than me is a recurring guest and the monarch of myths. It is one Dael Kingsmill.
I'm here again. It's me.
Woo!
Woo.
To have an old chinwag about minute 74, which is the minute begins with Miss Argentina from Beetlejuice there, still enamored by her...
Argentina, the truth is I never left you.
She's still in somehow like... The thing is that she kind of looks like, yeah, she's pretty impressed with these jewels, but at the same time, she's got jewels at home. And ends...
You might say, although she is dressed to the nines, she has jewels at home. Sorry, I'm gonna keep making Evita jokes. I'm on a musicals kick at the moment.
Evita Minute coming soon.
My main knowledge of Evita is the episode of The Simpsons where they just kind of remake it, but it's with Lisa. And that's my whole thing. It's like, yeah, I know it has Madonna in it. And I know The Simpsons did a whole thing about it. That was, unfortunately, is my extent of knowledge about That's like the other day someone was talking about like, oh, that show on Netflix, Anne with an E. And I was like, yeah, it's Anne of Green Gables. And they're like, oh, can you tell me what's Anne of Green Gables about? And I was like, I don't know. I just know that's what it is.
Same. I know it's a thing, and I know my partner, Lol, likes it.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about it.
It was one of those things, like, so this person instantly looked at it to me like I was a lifeline. I was like, oh, you must be a fountain of knowledge about this thing. Explain to me what the show is. I was like, I don't know.
To be fair, like... I mean, is Anne of Green Gables about anything? I like it. I'm a fan, but it's like she's a redhead, she's a kid, and she's adopted, and she's a bit of a tomboy, and gets it like she's a troublemaker. That's it. That's
that's
like
more than
the
I knew
plot.
before.
The rest of it is like sitcom variations on that until she's a grown up.
For a second there, I thought you said, when you said adopted, I thought you said abducted. I'm like, oh, that sounds like it's much more exciting now.
No,
That
no,
one's
it is.
yet.
It's not a certain movie we covered in the hiatus.
But anywho, of course, yeah. And the minute 74 ends with Bruce Wayne indulging his sweet tooth again. But yeah, so to actually get into the meat of this minute, this is, as I alluded to in the last episode, kind of, I think this may be Val Kilmer's sort of lowest point of the whole film. And it's because there's stuff that should be here that we were kind of talking about last time that he's just not batting back at all. Like, because, you know, he's able to sort of look at this and go like, oh, you know, this is, you're beaming images directly into the brain and whatnot. And Edward Nygma's doing this really smug, like, yeah, and you wish you thought of it. And it seems like, yeah, the rivalry is entirely on Edward Nygma's side. And would it not be much more interesting if Bruce was getting rattled by this guy and if he was getting like a little bugged? Because then that's drama. That's what a movie's supposed to be.
Yeah, and you know what? It is a shame as well because as much as I am the party killer of this particular podcast, I think this is one of Jim Carrey's strongest like minutes. He's bringing it for this, you know, like watching him put on the glasses as he's being asked the questions, and then like Bruce takes off the glasses and Nygma takes off his glasses, and it's like this constant back and forth. Like Jim Carrey's doing a good job in this bit. So it's rough that Val Kilmer's not like putting that energy back.
I think in the original script, like, there is an allusion to, Bruce Wayne is supposed to be getting irritated by this guy. There's supposed to be a whole thing where, like, the legal team at Wayne Enterprises is kind of bugging him. They're like, well, he made this device on company time when he was employed by you. You have a legal right to say that that's your product and stuff. And Bruce's like, I'm not going to pursue it. It'll look petty and whatnot. But when he comes in the original draft, when he comes into the party, he's sort of walking around going like, this is too much, this is too fast. And like Chase starts getting irritated with him because he's just going like, where do you get the financing for this? The mob? Some European cartel? Getting very, very aggravated by the fact that, like, well, in that draft, Lyle Heckendorf is sort of rubbing his wealth in his face. And even Chase says to him, like, do I detect a note of professional jealousy and stuff? And that should be like things in when Edward Nygma starts becoming enamored with Chase Meridian. Bruce should be getting a little more like, maybe she would go with him. Maybe I've misjudged this guy and whatnot. And then he should be doing like little petty things when, again, you could say that wouldn't be the Batman way to do things. But when he's going like, when you're, as Val Kilmer delivers it, like, what's to stop you from taking images out of the mind? It ties into the Bruce Wayne we know. Because Michael Keaton's version was always doing this little tip in his bat hand business. Remember in the first movie, he's the guy who, unbeknownst, for God knows what reason, came over to the Joker and was like, I know who you are. Like, yeah. And he was the guy who said to Max Schreck, like, oh, Oswald's the head of the Red Triangle Gang. I can't prove it yet.
I mean, in his defense, he doesn't scream it at a circus. But, yeah, no, you're totally right.
It was like, Val Kilmer's like, no one even listened to me that time. I have to let them know I'm Batman. But, yeah, this should be a scene where, like, I could totally imagine Michael Keaton been like, oh, well, putting a bit more emotion into this and been like, well, if you're able to, implant images in the mind, then what's to stop you from extracting the images out of the mind? And, like, really give it a bit more oomph. And maybe even say he's got Gossip Gertie right there. He could be kind of indicating to her, like, I'm trying to get a little jab at Edward Nygma to the press and whatnot.
It's a good question.
It is a good question, and they just glide past it.
And in the novelization, he is trying to do things like that. And Gossip Gertie's just like, writing headlines going like, oh, Wayne's got sour grapes and all this kind of business. But yeah, for some reason in the final movie, Jim Carrey's bringing it. And Val Kilmer is just like, interesting.
That's his character, isn't it, in this movie, though? For good or bad, that's his Bruce. He's very stoic.
Yeah. Which I do feel like it's a shame. I feel like this film was the perfect opportunity to get more Bruce Wayne than Batman, and still enjoy it. Especially because we're getting so much more Edward Nygma than we are getting Riddler. But you're right. He's a stoic. He's kind of Batman when he's Bruce Wayne. He's just not wearing a mask, which I get, and that's fine. That's a legitimate take on Batman, but I don't know. It's not what I was hoping for. It's not what I dreamed of. It's not what would have come to be if I'd used the Nygma box to bring my fantasies to life.
That's the thing. It's like, this Bruce should be more like the Michael Keaton one, I think, is the problem. Because, this is the movie. This is the Bruce movie. It should be the Bruce movie. And he is a good Batman, but not the best Bruce, I think. He's just playing it one note, but then everyone in this movie is playing it one note.
It's so frustrating because the whole point of the movie is like two sides to personalities and stuff. They emphasize it as a point over and over again, and yet all the actors are like, I'm going to play both personalities as if they were exactly the same.
It's a nightmare.
I do really enjoy with Edward Nygma is, the whole little sort of, it's almost like the friggin' Marx Brothers, like, mirror joke, where it's like, everything that Bruce Wayne does, Edward Nygma has to do it back. He's already got the same tux, he's got the same exact haircut, he's got the same exact glasses, and Bruce taking off the glasses, and Edward has to take off the glasses, and then Bruce puts them back on, so Edward has to quickly put them back on and stuff. I've actually discovered, like, an interesting quote in that regard from Jim Carrey. Where, like, from a magazine in the mid-90s, he said that the inspiration he took for Edward Nygma was actually Elvis Presley.
What?
What? No, maybe he did, but none of that. It's fine. I'll do my negative spiel in a bit. You finish what you're saying.
No, well, but
That doesn't come across, though, I agree.
I mean, just like within this context, because he says like I wanted to go Elvis in Vegas with the eagle on his back. In Vegas, the art wasn't coming from inside Elvis anymore; it was on the outside. Look at my diamond rings. Look at my eagle and my glasses. You start adorning the outside. That's what I wanted the Riddler to do. He needed that because he has no identity. And so I thought that was like, oh, you kind of get that in that his identity is that he's just stealing Bruce Wayne's identity. And the idea that, yeah, Jim Carrey was playing him as a man who has no identity of his own. So I guess then when he makes the construct of the Riddler, that's the only identity that is actually his, that he has. And all that is friggin' green spandex and friggin' question marks and whatnot. So just sort of thought like, yeah, so what he's essentially saying is here that he's doppelganging Bruce because he doesn't know how to be a person. Basically, he has no own personality of his own. And I think that would have come across better had, weirdly enough, the way Val Kilmer plays Bruce Wayne, had that been the way Jim Carrey played Edward Nygma at the start of the movie, where he just seems very bland and very sort of like, oh, you know, I've respected you for years and I've always wanted to meet you. And then when he gets boxed, he becomes crazier and zanier and stuff. It might have made more sense, but as we just said,
loads more sense.
I don't know. It's a perfectly cogent quote from Jim Carrey. It's a perfectly like logical thing to say. It's clever. But it doesn't show in any capacity. And it's like, it's just such a lie when the only character Jim Carrey has ever played, probably just with the exception of like Eternal Sunshine, is Jim Carrey. He has only ever played Jim Carrey. And sometimes it fits the role, and sometimes it doesn't fit the role even a little bit, but that's always who he's playing. And that's why I'm always going to be annoyed by him, because I'm annoyed by that person. Whereas it's like, other people can get away with it for me. Hugh Grant has only ever played Hugh Grant, but I like the person that he plays. So it's like, whatever, I'll let you get away with it, you know? This was not Elvis.
I think I can almost kind of get the Elvis bit when like he shows up later on and he's got like the jacket encrusted with like neon lights and stuff. It's like, I guess that's a bit Elvis-y.
That's true. That's a bit Elvis-y. That is true.
It's one of those things that like, yeah, Jim Carrey always seems so kind of like, yeah, he's just doing the same shtick every time. But when you hear him speak, he seems like he's a very thoughtful, kind of introspective guy.
I don't know where the gap is. What's like the dissonance between the thought process and the practice? Like, what is happening as an actor for him that he's like, I've done all this prep work and now I'm just gonna do this face instead? Like,
I think it's purely maybe like an anxiety thing. Like I get the impression he's more, it's like an extroverted introvert. You know, like he acts out because he seems to have, you know, a lot of sort of mental health problems and things. I sympathize with that. I think he sort of acts out that way, like as a mask, so to speak.
Oh, mask.
Oh, John, somebody ought to stop you. But,
I'm just here to be a complainer. I'm fulfilling my role as the person who comes on and poops at the party.
I was like, here she is, cranky pants Dael Kingsmill coming into. Although
that's what they call me. Yeah.
At this point of the movie, I'm starting to think like me and John are just getting Stockholm syndrome now, because like we've had people coming on. The last people we recorded with were coming in and going like, God, this movie's just friggin' garbage, isn't it? And me and John were just going like, you know, this should be a really stupid scene where Dick Grayson steals the Batmobile, but I actually really like it. I think it works really well. So. And even at this point, it's like, I should be annoyed by Jim Carrey, but I'm like, yeah, I think he's doing pretty well in this movie so far.
Help us, people. This is a cry for help.
Although, in talking about, though, like Jim Carrey like, and lack of identity and stuff, I think it's a thing that he just has an interest in his own life. Because like, if you watch that Man on the Moon documentary, at the end, he's talking about, you know, he invested his entire life into becoming Andy Kaufman, where he just lived as him. And he said after he came out of it, he's like, he didn't even know who he was anymore. He's like, oh, who is Jim Carrey? Like, what is the artifice of the self? And he started going into this whole thing. He's like, do I even exist as a person? And he's got that mentality of like, we are all just electrons floating in the void. Like we're, you know, everything is a mask to them. Maybe this is why he goes for these movies and stuff. He's like, yeah, any persona you put on is only, you know, it's putting a hat on a hat. You know, it's just like, it's just you making the, you know, the appearance of a person, but much like Patrick Bateman underneath there's just nothing there. It's just, you're just a series of emotions that are randomly put together.
Patrick Bateman is a worrying choice.
Well, as Jim Carrey could have been a great Patrick Bateman. It could have been.
I could see
You're
it.
not wrong. You're not wrong.
But although talking about Andy Kaufman,
No, I changed my mind. You are wrong. I don't want him to be Patrick Bateman.
Screw you, Niall.
I just thought about what he would do with his face, and now I'm annoyed.
I was like, oh, I hear you're going to Dorsia.
You'll get to, I was going to say, you'll get to hear the real me. Usually I hold back, I moderate my statements on the internet. Here I'm like, no, I hate it.
The mask is off at Dael Kingsmill when she's on Batman.
This is who I really am.
Although talking about Andy Kaufman briefly, though, seeing as Drew Barrymore standing right next to Jim Carrey here, a little interesting bit of trivia I saw about Drew Barrymore is that at 7 years old, she was the youngest person to ever host Saturday Night Live. And she was the guest host for the Saturday evening when viewers voted Andy Kaufman to never be allowed to be on the show again. So I think they must have just done imagine Andy Kaufman himself probably would have set that up, where the viewers got to call in and say, we never want to see that man again, which I'm sure he would have found hilarious. But, much kind of like they did with Robin back in the day when they're like, we're going to set up a hotline where people could just kill off Jason Todd if they want.
I can't believe, and everyone... the reaction afterwards where everyone's like, oh no, what have we done? It's like, you did it. You voted for this. Whatever, it's fine. Leave my boy Jason alone.
Although, again, and seeing Drew Barrymore there, like, one of my favorite lines of hers is from E.T. And the fact that it's a whole thing about Edward's Nygma is mirroring Bruce Wayne. I kind of wanted Bruce at one point to say, and Edward, they say that there are alligators in the sewers, and then for Drew Barrymore to go, alligators in the sewers and stuff, because that's a little deep cut E.T. line that I really, really love, where she's...
Oh my gosh, yeah, I didn't think of that.
Yeah, that just would have been cute that Edward went to say alligators in the sewers, and then Sugar came out with alligators in the sewers. And it would have been like, oh, Joel Schumacher's making the deep references. But tragically, I don't think he thought of that, or anyone would have thought of that at any point except right now. But, although, actually, Dale, here's a question for you.
Yes?
I tried to do a little bit of research on this, and I think you'd be much more well-equipped. Because it became... The idea that Bruce, Edward is becoming a doppelganger of Bruce. And there's this whole storyline of someone trying to steal an identity. They always say there's only so many stories in the world. And I was trying to get into where does the concept of doppelganging and whatnot come from in mythology? And the closest I could get, they were saying Narcissus. And it's like, well, that's his own reflection, though. Do you know from your broader knowledge of ancient myth where is there an old story about someone trying to literally steal the identity of a rival or anything along those lines that might be parallel to this?
Certainly not in sort of Western classical mythology that springs to mind in terms of Greek or Roman canon, but I believe doppelgangers are German? I mean, that seems... Okay, now that I've said that out loud, that seems like a really obvious thing to say. Yes, the word doppelganger is German. I understand. But I think it's German folklore rather than, mythological stuff, if that makes sense. So it's not Germanic myth like the sagas or anything along those lines, but I believe it's kind of a folkloric monster, more in the sense of, a witch that's going to eat you. You know what I mean? But I also just don't have enough of a background in sort of northern mythologies and folklores to speak with confidence on it. You know what I mean?
But there's no stories of this one time Loki pretended to be Thor and he just was living Thor's life way better than him or anything along those lines.
Nothing that springs to mind, which is actually odd, come to think about it, because it's very prevalent in modern mythology.
Yeah.
Which typically we tend to pull mostly from the same sort of mythological backgrounds over and over again when we're telling our stories. But it's odd that it's kind of like how werewolves are so much more common in modern mythology than they are in any ancient texts. You can find wolfmen in ancient texts, but they weren't the same and they weren't popular kind of until film. It's like reading The Duchess of Malfi, which is an early modern play. There is a werewolf in that, but it's just a guy who thinks he's a wolf and he eats some like dead bodies and that's it.
Ooh.
And he just goes crazy and that's him and his role in the play done. And it's just so different from how we look at it now. I feel like doppelgangers kind of sit in that zone of something that has been picked up since the advent of like audio-visual technology and has been given new life since then. It's fascinating.
Once again, it originated with Batman Forever, and everyone's just been ripping it off since. It's like Marvel Cinematic Universe have been mining this movie. Everyone's just been mining Batman Forever, and Joel Schumacher's just too nice a guy to do anything about it.
You know what I've heard? I've heard that Batman Forever is actually the only story.
That's it. Everything is just a reworking of this.
Just
everything in history.
You watch Terms of Endearment, and you say it's not exactly like Batman Forever. You're just not looking hard enough, quite frankly.
I need to talk about something at the very beginning of this as well.
Oh, yeah.
Which we never got to. I love the little attention to detail with... Because the whole thing of him wanting to be Bruce, I don't think it's explored enough, but there's little things in this scene that are very good. Like, he puts the glasses on to look like Bruce. Then when Bruce takes his glasses off, Nygma has to take his glasses off. He's got to match him. It's like, oh, that's what I do now. Okay, yes. I thought that was really cool. That was a nice little detail. Although I was then very distracted by the fact that Val is absolutely caked in makeup. It looks great, like, don't get me wrong, but it's like, whoa, they've gone to town.
Well, I did also find out recently from reading Val Kilmer's AMA from Reddit. His favorite food is any form of pizza, and he's a guy who loves friggin' name dropping. The second favorite thing he's ever had to eat is a dish that Cindy Crawford used to make for him when they went out. Because, no big deal. He used to go out with Cindy Crawford in the 90s. But apparently it was just pasta soaked in butter and laced with caviar. So it's like...
Oh, come
sorry,
on.
what?
That's such a rich person's thing.
Oh, that's crazy.
Butter noodles with fish eggs.
You put it that way, of course it doesn't sound appealing, but when it's Cindy Crawford serving you beautiful buttery, fresh butter pasta, absolutely drenched in the richest of caviars.
Oh,
but it wouldn't surprise me. He's just a guy with a diet of just pizza.
I can't even picture it. Just trying to make my brain put that image in front of me is.
Hey, I think if Cindy Crawford's bringing you food, you just eat and like whatever she's giving you.
Oh yeah, that's probably absolutely repulsed by it. But he's like, "Oh, it's great, Cindy." But imagine though, a guy who's living on a diet of friggin' pizza and butter, pasta, caviar. He's probably got a couple of spots there. So imagine again, just cake him in makeup to make Bruce Wayne not look like he's like 15 years old or something.
Well, how does that diet explain his physique? He looks great in this movie.
That's all corsets, John. He borrows Drew Barrymore's corset when she's not on screen. That's how he's hiding it all.
I love the line as well when Nygma wants to take Chase for a groove on the dance floor. He's like, "Shall we dance?" Why does he say it that way? Is he just being a dick?
Because he's Jim Carrey.
Because there's no way he was told to do that, right? That's just Jim.
I imagine too, because it sounds a little. It's that transatlantic kind of way of saying things. I think that's supposed to be.
No, it does not. No.
I don't think it's supposed to be going for that kind of like the Katharine Hepburn upper crust kind of sound and stuff.
There's no way that's what he's doing. He's just being Jim Carrey. Look, here's the thing. I love the transatlantic accent. It might be my favorite one. Definitely top 3. And I've been working for so long to be able to nail it. I cannot nail it, but this ain't it. This ain't it, man.
I just kind of really want to see, like, if Dael got a time machine, she'd just be going back to the sets of old Jim Carrey movies and stuff, and people would be like, "Oh, isn't he a genius? Like, he's just becoming Andy Kaufman," and just in the background, Dale's just like, "No, he's not. He's just been Jim Carrey."
Yeah, that's exactly.
Somebody stop him.
Why are you listening to this man? Oh, no. I'd be the worst time traveler.
Like, standing in front of the theater doors going, "Do not go in there."
Yeah, ironically, your time travel actually is what made him popular in the first place.
Oh, that's so upsetting. But no, I maintain that the sort of transatlantic accent, none of the vowels are real vowels. So saying dance, that is recognizable. No, a transatlantic accent has to be more like dance. Like it's got to be the halfway point between those two things.
Oh, okay.
Fair enough.
That's why it's the best accent.
I don't know. I think like other guests would have just let that point go, but I think like we've not reckoned with Dael Kingsmill and her knowledge of the transatlantic accent.
You didn't account for how strongly I feel about it.
I did not see how quick that riddle was going to be answered coming, and I was like, "Oh crap! You better mind your P's and Q's around this lady."
Why does Chase agree to the DARNCE, though? Like, what's the point in doing so? Is it just not to offend him? Either way, I mean, as a viewer, it's worth it for Nygma's face.
Well, again, this would be something like if there was a scene earlier where Bruce was becoming very apparently jealous of Edward Nygma and it was bugging Chase, where she was like, well, just stop talking about it. Who cares? And then, she was like, maybe Edward Nygma was genuinely so charming because he's just like Bruce Wayne, but he's not been a dick to her right at the minute and complaining about another guy. She could be like, oh, maybe we'll go with this guy. You never know. It could be nice. Just have a little dance with him and stuff. But the thing is, like,
for sure,
the priorities of these three people, as seen as when she is dancing with him, Edward Nygma, at this point, should be trying to woo Chase Meridian, but he is 100% concentrating on Bruce Wayne the entire time. It's kind of like Bruce's priority should be Chase and just making sure she's having a good time, but his focus is, I'm Batman, I've got to investigate this machine, and I got to have a little dig at this guy, and I have to, I'm in Batman mode, even though I'm supposed to be in Bruce Wayne mode right now. Edward Nygma should be trying to win over Chase Meridian and like wooing her and like whispering sweet nothings in her ear and all this kind of stuff. But he's so obsessed with Bruce Wayne that he can't, even when he's dancing with her, he's just looking at Bruce Wayne the whole time. And Chase Meridian should be like, I guess maybe I could fall for this Edward Nygma guy, or maybe like what's going on with Bruce. But in her head, she's like, I wish I was dancing with Batman. Batman's the only thing I care about in this whole goddamn movie.
Batman in his rubber suit. I feel like the only person whose face is doing the right thing for the scene in that moment when Shall We Dance is Drew Barrymore in the background in the shadows, like, because you've got Jim Carrey, he's Shall We Dance, he's doing Jim Carrey face. You've got Val Kilmer, who just looks totally disinterested, as he has for most of the film, and for some reason Nicole Kidman's like, she clearly does not want to dance with him, but then the minute they are dancing, she's just doing I'm enjoying dancing with you face.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Drew Barrymore's in the background going, Sly, we have a plan. And I'm like, thank you for just, you have one motivation and you're playing to it. Thank you for that.
I do like, the shots of Nygma and Sugar are really good. Because, he's doing his shtick. And it's kind of, even like the way that, the way he plays it is so kind of calm when Bruce is like, oh, well, what's to stop you from extracting images out of the mind? And other actors could have had like a little pregnant pause there of like, oh, you're on to me? Like, because that is what he's doing. But he just has this kind of like, he instantly plays it cool, like, oh, too timid to try my machine? Like, he doesn't show his cards at all. So he's standing with Sugar and she's in the shadows behind him. And she's just oozing like a sinister aura of like, she's sexy and sultry, but like, these two people, they got something going on. They're cooking up a scheme here. And also kind of helps that like in the background, like the little image that they put on the box booths, it kind of almost looks vaguely like the toxic waste symbol and stuff. It look like it's like a warning label or something more than anything else.
That's true.
So it's like, it's a very well framed shot.
Nygma here as well, right? He really can't dance, and I adore it. It's so comical, and he's not even paying attention to Chase either. Like, he's spying on Brucey boy.
I will say, okay, as much as I'm never letting it go, Jim Carrey's annoying, but I do love this shot. The way that this little piece is edited and directed is so great. When Chase actually takes his hand and he spins her around, and he like swoops up behind Bruce and then out of shot.
Oh, yeah.
The timing on that is perfect. Like, I have to give that. I think the dancing is annoying, but that little moment where he just sort of swings out of frame is one of my favorites.
I think it's annoying in a good way, though, as in it fits the character here. Like,
I would think it was annoying in a good way if he wasn't like that for the rest of the movie.
Well, that's the issue, I think, yeah. Because I mean, I get the vibe that he's trying to be cool. This is what I like. He's trying to be cool and suave. I'm like Bruce Wayne. But look at him dancing, like, because he's not. He's a nerd. Right? That's funny. He's a nerd who's trying to be cool and it doesn't work. But he was like this before. He's like this after. He never changes.
I do kind of feel for Nicole Kidman because Jim Carrey is just gurning it up and like just sort of making, just been a cartoon character basically. When Chase is trying to dance with him, it's all that Nicole Kidman can do is try not to kind of laugh or break. And it's kind of like she doesn't know where to look. She's sort of just like, I guess I look over here.
Yeah.
Because he's just doing
But then
crazy
I feel
stuff.
like she should have a reaction. Again, it should still, there should be that thing of like, what are you doing? Like, please don't embarrass me or something. But there wasn't. Ah! I'm gonna turn into the Incredible Hulk this episode. This is it. This is when my reputation goes down in tatters, just because I'm so enraged by everything that's happening in this film.
I will say though, actually, in talking about like all the potential the box could have had, or the potential it does have that they didn't use, you do get a little hint of some things in the original Bachelor draft here, because it says that Chase doesn't dance with Edward Nygma. As she walks into the box booth, like Edward invites her, like, well, why don't you give it a spin? So she walks tentatively to the display. Lyle, as he's called, Matt, nods to a technician, and a shimmering blue energy beam engulfs her. Chase gasps, and her party dress transforms into a gauzy white ballroom gown, straight out of a 1930s movie. Then, miraculously, materializing beside her, the greatest dance partner of all time, Fred Astaire, in person, in black and white.
I thought it was going to be Batman. I'm not going to lie, I thought it was going to be Batman.
But then Chase also turns into black and white to match. And then it's Chase and Fred Astaire dancing while Bruce and Edward talk.
That's sick. That's awesome.
Yeah, why didn't they do that? That was a great idea.
I quite like that, actually. It's making more use out of this gizmo.
Yeah.
It feels
should
like
be
it's a
in the
more
plot.
threatening thing to like, oh no, they've put Chase in the box. Like, they've put Chase in the box. You know what I mean.
Nobody puts
She's in
Chase
the
in the
booth.
box.
Yeah, she's in the booth. The box is doing it. Yeah.
But again, like mentioned earlier in the season, like a lot of the Riddler stuff is based on a Batman animated episode called "What Is Reality." That kind of thing would be like, what is reality? If you have a thing that can literally transport you back to the 1930s, and you yourself are now in black and white, what's to say that there could be stuff going on later on where Batman's like, I don't even know what's real anymore. How do I know I'm not still in the box? Like, what the hell am I doing here? Like,
I have a question. In this early script, was Chase equally throw herself at people-y?
yep. But one of the few things that does not change whatsoever is the characterization of Chase Meridian.
For starters, that's insane. But second, and more important for the subject at hand, is it is a bold move as a woman so open about her sexual fantasies as Chase to be like, I'm gonna step into this booth and let people watch on a screen what my fantasy is. Like, what? I feel like that would have gotten away from PG very quickly. So it's very brave of her to just be like, yeah, it's fine. They'll only see the Fred Astaire one.
Hey, in her, she doesn't care. In her defense,
That's true. You know
what makes her... The thing they should have explored more, and I think makes her kind of interesting, is she... out of the gate knows what she wants. She's there. I'm gonna bone the bat. It's like, and
That's true.
she pursues what she wants.
She does. I mean, I do wish that she would take no for an answer a little bit more.
Yeah,
But you are correct.
but she, you can't stop this woman.
I'd be part of her kink as well. Though. It's like I finally won over Batman, and then I get to say to him, "No, I want to tease this out even longer. It's all the joy is all in the chase. It's right there in her name. For Christ's sake."
Hey!
We've uncovered the truth of the character.
You know what else? This is, danger zone. So, my mother is a university tutor lecturer person, and at the moment, one of their classes is looking at Mission Impossible 2. That very fine film.
Oh man, she could have been a guest on Mission Impossible Minute, because me and John were on talking about Brendan Gleeson's nipples on that season.
Well, there you go. But there's an interesting thing that comes up in that class where they study the movie, where it talks about because he's Ethan Hunt, and you've got the surname Hunt there, and then what's her surname? Her surname is Chapel or Temple or house, or it's a building of some kind, and and you get to talk about, because it's in a sort of sex, gender and sexuality class, and so they talk about the gender dynamics that are established from the minute you learn these characters' names, because his is active, his is outdoors, hers is domestic, it's indoors, it's these things based on the names. And I have to respect the way that this movie does the same thing with Chase. It's like, this is what her character is for, but they just tell you, like, they immediately they have Nygma say, yes, like I would be chasing you as a sexual prospect. Like, they just tell you as an audience, this is why her name is that.
I mean, like calling Clark Kent in Man of Steel like Jesus Kent or something, where it's like, oh Christ Almighty.
Oh,
like, make it a little bit hard for us.
That's what they call him. That's his name. He's Christ Almighty Kent.
Hey. Well, Bruce sneaks off here. He's up to something. Look, he gets caught in the act by Sugar.
Yeah.
Because she's on her game.
Mm.
Oh, yeah.
She's the only one.
Something tells me, even though we know that she's sort of playing the long game here, something tells me she kind of doesn't really care if he's up to no good, even.
Mm.
She's got her own agenda going on under the covers, so to speak.
She's just in it for the mischief.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why not?
But yeah, that is kind of like that's the end of this minute. Does anyone have anything about this minute in particular they want to talk about, or should we mosey on to the next?
I've only got one other thing, because
what's your thing?
Once again, the Goldsman draft is longer.
Mm.
There's more. It's bonkers, to be honest. There's loads of stuff. It gets really, really technical. Like, I don't even know what this bit means. They're going about B coupons. What's a B coupon?
Are you sure this isn't just an ad that popped up in the in the middle of the website? You're reading it off, John.
No. This is the draft. Edward says, I notice you've subdivided your B coupons. Feeling a little light on principle? I think it's like donating or something.
What?
And Bruce says, actually, I like to divest just before a major recapitalization. This is very... Then Edward... This is the bit I actually like. He says, I wouldn't race to the bank. Old regimes crumble every day. Life is a cycle. Remember Yeats. Turn, the widening Gaia? I don't know how you pronounce that word. The falconer cannot hear the falcon. And then Bruce finishes the
tower.
poem.
It's go on.
It is, yeah. He says, and the beast slouches towards Bethlehem. And Chase then butts in saying, excuse me, boys, I'd hate to stop this testosterone flood on my account. And then he says, quite right, shall we dance?
This sounds like a scene from Frasier to me, which is why I love it.
Yeah.
I think this sounds terrific.
That's so bizarre. When you said it was going to get technical, I was thinking sciencey technical.
Well, the
so
start
for it
is
to
like
then
a business.
Be like business talk followed by poetry. Like,
Yeah.
what? It's a great poem.
I can see why they cut it, though, because it's very odd.
I think, though, that, again, that adds into the idea that these two guys are legitimately rivaling each other. Like, Edward been like, oh, I noticed that your charitable donations are a little bit down, Bruce. Are you feeling the economic hits? And he's like, oh, no, I think it's wise to divest before any major recoupment. And then like, oh, is that what it is? Well, I noticed that you're wearing slightly less, slightly less fancy shoes tonight. Maybe you have to save your money for. We all know that Wayne Tech hasn't been doing as well lately. And like, oh, well, Edward, like
it is like he keeps trying to find something he can one up him on.
Yeah.
So he's like, well, I'm going to go toe to toe with him. Intellectually now, I'm gonna throw this poem out there and see if he gets what I'm on about.
Just to give any indication that he's been bugged by like just an arched eyebrow and an annoyed smirk or something. I'm like, yeah, right, Edward. Like something. Give us anything.
The thing that is so upsetting to me about this little extension of the scene is that I can see Jim Carrey doing it and doing it pretty well. Not the poem necessarily, but the business talk part of it that I didn't follow at all. I could see him just like spitting it out really quickly in a way that makes it seem like, oh no, they're doing technical business talk and he knows what he's talking about. And I'm so upset that I can picture Jim Carrey doing that well.
We'll also say, we'll be remiss, of course, The Widening Gyre is also a Batman story written by Kevin Smith, weirdly enough.
Oh Yeah,
So, there you
I didn't
go.
even think of that.
I think the only other thing like I have about this minute is that the woman at the beginning, Miss Argentina from just really reminds me of Miss Argentina from Beetlejuice, but it was played by an actress called Rhea Coyne, and she was in nothing of real note except a short called Canine Sex Scandal, which is like
Wow.
can't find any info on it, but I am
That is a
fascinated.
title.
I know. I don't know what to expect from that.
But anyway, shall we wrap up this minute?
Yeah,
Yes,
we'll
let's.
head off. We'll do the plugs on Friday. Screw it. We're just going to ditch you and we're going to run. We're going to leg it. Anyway, we'll see you again on Friday for more Batman Forever. Next time, a Dark Knight deception. An investigator indulges his sweet tooth outside a box booth and converses with a candy-coated dandy who seems a little randy. But as Bruce deigns to dabble with the device after a requisite reprieve, does a seemingly sweet siren have a secret up her sleeve? Find out Friday. Same Bat Pod, different Bat Minute.
Ba-da-da, ba-da-da-da-da-da. Da-da-ba-da-da.